What do you do on the TV show?
Ka-chow.
Ka-chow. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the first of many of a conversation between my brother and I. So I just wanted to take a moment to introduce my brother. His name's Rodney. He's 2 years older than me. He pipeline welder for 12 years plus, a husband of 9 years, father of 5 plus to my beautiful niece, and he's got one on the way. He is a owner. He was a pipeline welder for 12 years, transitioned to business owner. So he now owns Midstate Welding out of Spearfish, South Dakota. Done that for 5 years, I believe now. I worked out of his garage for 3 years before purchasing the shop almost a couple years ago as of the recording of this podcast. And so I just want to introduce you to him. In future podcast conversations between my brother and I, we will dive deeper into how he got into pipeline, how he got his welding start, how he got into pipeline work, and how he transitioned to his own business, and so on and so forth. But in today's video, we want to focus on project management. So that's one thing me and Rodney have a lot of conversations about business because we're constantly learning. And so one of my hopes for this, our ongoing conversation, is to help you just through our experience. And at the end of this video today, at the end of this podcast today, we've got some exciting news about the TV show that Rodney has been on for one season now. It's called Building Outside the Lines. As of the recording of this video, the second season is airing, and so we've got some exciting news about second season, but we'll share that at the end of the podcast. So yeah, today we're going to talk about project management because it is one thing that we learned whenever I went up to help Rodney last summer of 2024. Went up there to help him. He was covered up with work, and we had no idea what we were going to get into, but we learned a lot just by way of our natural, my natural experience of being real slow with work, and Rodney's natural experience with his business. But we'll get more into that here in a minute. So welcome to the YouTube channel, Rodney, and welcome viewers to my brother, Rodney.
Hi, everyone. It's good to be on here, and not gonna lie, it's a little different from this side of it. But super excited. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm super glad to have you. I'm excited about our ongoing conversations. So, I guess just to tear into the subject matter, project management. So I guess I'll just hand the floor off to you. How did we get started with this project management? What was going on whenever I was up there? Yeah, I mean, how did it come about?
So to give a little backstory and to kind of set the scene, we were right in the middle of summer, kind of towards the end of it, which is usually, as most of y'all know, any type of welding projects, that's usually where the busy season is. And so I had multiple projects going on and other projects coming down the line also. And when Austin came up, when he first got here, me and my mother-in-law always have a team meeting, and so Austin joined in, and we're talking about some things that need to happen during the week. And Austin's like, long story short, I need more details, and what projects do you have going on? Because you keep rattling stuff off, but I don't see a sheet. I need more information. And so that's where we started digging into exactly what we had, all the way from estimates to current projects that are been on hold. Especially this year, we had other projects, and that seemed to take forever to get gone through. So yeah, so once we kind of came up with a list, and that's kind of where the project management's naturally sprung from. I'll let you take it from your side.
Like Rodney said, I was sitting in he said they have a meeting every week, him and Tammy, Rodney's mother-in-law. Every Monday morning they have a meeting, and I was sitting in one of those meetings. I don't remember if it was the first one or what it was, but I was sitting there and they were rattling off, because Tammy will she answers the phone for Rodney, and she was telling Rodney about a couple of things going on, and Rodney was like, "Oh yeah, we got this too." They were just telling each other what projects they got going on. And I was sitting there observing this is the value of an outsider perspective. I just come up there, I didn't know what was going on, but I was sitting there listening, and I was like, neither one of them are writing anything down. And like, this isn't going to get sorted out if we don't have, it just, my organizational mind kicked in, I guess, or whatever. I was able to come in with a fresh set of eyes and ears. So literally how we started this is considered an SOP, a standard operating procedure. For those of you that have never heard of that, that's just it's a standard operating procedure. So all I knew is I needed to back up. Since I didn't know anything about any of the projects, I needed to know, I was trying to figure out where the projects were so we could better communicate with the customer. That's one of the benefits to this system that we built. And by the way, I didn't come up with this system. This is the systems that businesses have used. There's probably one out there that, is, better or whatever, but this one's definitely customized to Rodney's business and what he had going on. And I believe that's what needs to happen in any business, because any business is slightly different. So anyway, the first thing I did, like Rodney said, was I said, Rodney, you and I got to sit down and you got to tell me every single project you have going on. So I got down with pencil and paper, and Rodney started rattling off projects, and I just started writing them down. And then we went back, and again, I had to ask Rodney, like, where's this project at? Do you need to go look at it? Have you looked at it? You just need to, design it. You need to price it. What's the status, And so we literally started in on this project list. And I think the joy in this conversation today that I kind of just want to make sure that the audience is getting is how authentic this happened between Rodney and I, and how much inspiration came from it. Because ever since I've left, every other time I talk to Rodney over the phone, he's made me feel real good by saying, like, man, ever since you've been here, we come up with that list. It's like, it's been helping me, stay motivated. It's been helping me stay, organized with my projects and stuff. And so I guess that's just what I want the viewers to take from this conversation, is how beneficial an outsider's point of view is, and how, if you're starting a business and you feel like you're not doing good in a certain area, it's possible that it's because that may not be where you're most natural at. But like, by me and Rodney coming together, I was able to identify something in me and my experience that was able to help Rodney with his experience. Question for you, Rodney: how were you feeling before I come up there? Like, what kind of like, how were you feeling?
Emotions.
Yeah, like I can only assume it was very, like, all over the place, but I want you to share from your point of view.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? Before Rodney shares how he's feeling, I wanted to let you know that the deadline to sign up for the March 8th and 9th branch workshop here in Cushing, America is February 4th. You have to be signed up and paid up by February 4th. So head on over to arosswelding.school to sign up if you are interested in that branch workshop. Also, let me know in the comments if you would be interested in a different location of the branch workshop. I'm thinking about doing mobile workshops, but I'm also thinking about doing one in South Dakota, Spearfish, South Dakota, where Rodney is at. So he would be there to instruct as well. Since he has years of pipeline experience as well, that would be a different experience, a different place to visit, and you might live closer to that area. Let me know what you think down in the comments below.
Yeah. So in that moment, there was the best way to describe what I was going through at that very moment was I was feeling shorthanded. I was feeling overwhelmed with as much work opportunities that were coming in, because there's estimates. If you don't get estimates done, if you don't get them out fast enough, you lose the job naturally. Then there was a matter of, the guys that were with me. I had a young man that had worked with us for a while. He had quit to go on to some bigger and better things. And so I was down a guy. I have a young man that's working for us at the time, or still is. And he's just new. And so it's kind of one of those moments that I was feeling overwhelmed with how much I needed to get done. And I felt like I needed to be in 10 different places at the same time. and trying to task those each things, as they say in the business world, wearing all the hats. Like literally, you're sitting there with all these hats. You're trying to do all the estimates, doing the invoices. I mean, my wife helps with invoices, but doing all those, yeah, estimates, invoices, looking at projects, drawing up the projects if there wasn't already blueprints for the project. So you got to design it, you got to draw it out so that the guys in the shop know what they're doing. So they're in those moments, it was just like really heavy, but at the same time, you kind of get used to it and you don't, it's kind of like being a frog in boiling water. You get used to it, you don't think about it. And then, yeah, so to summarize, how I was feeling, it was just all over the place. You're just picking away at what you can and doing what you can. Yeah, just trying to accomplish as
Yeah.
much as you can with what experience and knowledge that you have at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate on a different it's one thing Rodney and I have talked about a lot is I can relate because in our business, I on the online in the online world, I'm still editing my videos. I'm still planning all my videos, which there's not much planning because I'm overwhelmed with editing because I'm overwhelmed whenever, I do have a service-based project come up. Like there's just a lot to do when it's only, you and another person or whatever. And how many other people are on your team? All of you are doing like, three or four different jobs, so it's very stressful. So I could relate to Rodney and I could see that. And I instantly felt that because of my outsider's point of view coming in. Like I was like they can't even stay focused. So like I said, we got a list of all we're not gonna go over every single step, but because there's 16 things on this thing that we come up with for Rodney's, business. But like I said, everybody's, business is gonna be slightly different. But I know like for me being a one-man band, like one thing that I was able to for sure nail down simplistically is like I need to go visit the job. I need to visit with the customer about the design of the job before I can ever even start to price material or not price, but like, get a material list and then price the material and then think about how long the job's going to take me. There's all these, there's those two steps that got to come before. And so that's what we did. We wrote down all of his projects and then we wrote next to it, where's this one at? And this took a long time, by the way. Like I want to voice that like we were literally still working on. I was there for 5 weeks and we were still like we did get a list made, but we were still working on like the next phase. Like and I also want to point out like how valuable working on your own business is and like walking through the mud yourself because Rodney, I know you've listened to several books, several
Yeah.
things, and that it's all good, but it's like to actually learn it for your specific business, walking through it is the best way to get things nailed in with your specific business. And like I said earlier, the benefit to this project status is what I'm calling it, project status SOP. The benefit that Rodney and I gained from it was the fact that we could now better communicate to the customer a realistic timeline. Like if a new customer calls and says, "Hey, I need a deck built over here, and I need, when can you get on it?" Well, if you don't have this and you don't have each project, in a certain phase, you can only guess. It might. And so what a lot of us do, again from experience, is because we don't want to lose the job, we're like, oh yeah, a couple weeks, oh yeah, a couple weeks. Well, whenever you start breaking all this down, Rodney had a whole page, like literally a whole page this size full. So how many ever, I forget how many lines, it was like around 30 or more projects
It was
that he had
close.
that he had going on. And so it was needed at that time, getting some organization. So I don't know, do you think we should go through some of these? I mean, I mentioned a couple, but I didn't know if you could kind of pick me up here, Rodney. Where should we go?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So far as some of the status and help understand, especially for those of you just getting started in your own welding business, We all know that, like Austin said, you got to go look at the job. You got to put the price together. And within that price, you got to put your materials together, a timeline. So there's all these steps that you go through before you even get to it, a price, a proposal. And so in this step process, you like whatever your business looks like, if it's a reoccurring transaction, then there's some sort of steps you still have to go through to make sure. But these steps that we were talking about, what did I say? Proposal, and then I would say a couple other things. Once you get your price put together, well, then you need to know where you're at with time, with scheduling. Like, where's the rest of your projects at? Because the problem that I've ran into, you get some of these commercial projects or these bigger projects, they have a deadline that they want you to hit. And so if you're booked out to up to here, then by scheduling, you should know that you probably shouldn't bid that job or take on that job because you're not going to meet their deadline. So that's why it's super important to have some sort of system and know where you're at in your business. And that's just step one, is what I would call it, step one, because hopefully I'm not going too far, Austin, is because then that gets into planning and your organization in those steps. As you go through, you start to realize the next steps that you have to take.
Yeah, no, totally, totally, totally. That's like, I mean, this will be the third time I'm going to say it, and I think it's good to say things over and over. I know myself, I need to hear things over and over and over again for them to sink in. The biggest benefit to this project status standard operating procedure is to allow Rodney, in this case, us in this case, to give the customer a realistic timeline, but also ourselves a realistic timeline. Like Rodney just said, if I'm going to bid on this project, I need to know if realistically, with the help I have right now, if I can even if I even need to be spending time quoting it, because that's a whole nother variable, which is how much help you have, the equipment you have, like all that matters. You know, if you add another two guys to your crew, well, that changes your calendar. You know, you're getting more done in a calendar time. So all of a sudden, like it's literally ever changing. That's what I think is so intriguing about business and like construction business, because so it's like you literally got to be reevaluating. That's one thing Rodney and I have talked a lot about, is reevaluating, like on the daily, on the weekly. You know, if you do want to step off into a bigger project, okay, well, we need to have a whole nother leg of our business that is, you know, vetting help, looking for help, you know, having applications come in on a steady or whatever. We haven't even got to that yet in Rodney's business, but we've talked about that. That's something we were talking about, I think, as I was leaving, if I remember correctly. It was about like, you know, looking ahead, about like we need to have help on deck. You know, we need to know where we're looking for help because we want the right help. That's, you know, important. So yeah, this project status list, for me, like I was talking to Rodney earlier, for me it just forces us to slow down the process, you know, and to kind of like, I guess I kind of just want to share, like I kind of just want to share the first what did we do here? The first one is the initial project visit. So whether you have a shop and you're doing repair work, or you're going to look at a new mobile welding project like a deck in Rodney's case, or just anything else, you got to have the initial project visit, put eyeballs on it, discuss with the customer what they're wanting. And the step two was figuring out the design. Again, whether you're getting a project come in the shop, and if you need to replicate a piece that's kind of wore out or whatever, or if the customer wants a piece similar to it, like you need to know all those little details. Like this is the design, I think, is something that I know a lot of us skip over, but that is highly, highly important, because if you don't have that design, you can't go on to figuring how much material you have. You can, but that's where I feel like a lot of people mess up, including myself. Like, and you could break this down even more. That's what's interesting about this. But initial project visit, figuring out the design, making sure the customer is good with the design on all the details. And then comes the second phase, material, time, and price estimate. You know, you got to figure out how much material you need, and then you got to figure out how long the project's going to take you. And then you can add those two things together, of course, plugging in all your own numbers with your own business. You know, you got to figure out your own overhead, et cetera, how much money, you want to make, essentially, how much you need to make and how much you want to make. And then you can plug this into a bid and pitch it to the customer. But knowing those first two things, the initial project visit and the design, allows you to put the material, time, and price together, which then helps with your scheduling then on out. But yeah, after you get the price put together, you can then propose the project to your customer, the bid essentially. And then you can schedule it. Once you get the green light, you can schedule it. And then go to the fun part is what I would say. The fun part, as in us welders, we're welders, so that's what we want to build it. We want to start the project. But all these prep stages come first. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out there for anybody that's listening. If you weren't feeling like you were getting value out of this, like that is I think what I would highlight in our conversation is the design. The design is highly, highly important. There's a lot of questions. To give an example of this real quick, I don't know where we want to take the conversation after this, but to give an example, there's this meat locker project that I have kind of been involved in. And I was at my aunt's house the other night. I was talking with my aunt and uncle, and I had already sat down and figured how long all this was going to take me to do. And I sat down talking with them. They run a concrete business, and my uncle does concrete work, and our uncle does concrete work. And he mentioned, he's like, well, are they going to be hanging deer, and how many deer are they going to be hanging? Are they going to be hanging cows? Like, are they going to be doing hogs? Does it need to all be separated? Like, there was all these questions that I thought I had asked enough questions, but turns out I hadn't even asked enough questions when it comes to this custom project. So it's like, because all those little details matter in the weight of this that we're going to build. If you don't know how much weight you're going to be putting in this thing, you don't know what material to price. So it's like, I think that's just a good example of how important it is whenever, especially when you're doing commercial projects. I mean, you need to know, everything commercial and or custom like this. I mean, this lady, she didn't have any prints. I mean, she had a little drawing, but there wasn't enough details when it comes to the weight of things. So the design is something I would highlight in our conversation, and how beneficial the design is in this project status SOP.
Well, if I can add to that, because so whenever you were here, the one thing that you noticed and I didn't realize is that sometimes we tend to, or for me, what Austin had pointed out is that I had a tendency to minimize the design of the project. Because if there's any welders, you're like, oh, we can make it work. You kind of have an idea, per se. And I started realizing that, when we were discussing some of these newer projects coming through, Austin would be like, hey, so what about that? Kind of like he's talking about our uncle asking these other questions. Because there's a lot of times where you're like, yeah, so if it's railing that we're building, yeah, it's about this long or whatever, but realizing if you don't ask the customer exactly what they're wanting, and it's not always just exactly what they're wanting, but it's also asking the who, what, why, and when, the core questions to it, that it's real easy. I found myself like, because like I've done a few things now to where I'm like, well, I got a general idea, but I've learned on a previous project that really make sure to look at the project. There's a lot of things that to be aware of and not to minimize, because I feel like that's a key word that Austin really pointed out that I've had to really take hold of and reassess whenever I'm taking on a project or looking at a project.
Yeah, yeah, it's huge, man. Minimizing, we all do it, some worse than others, but that's one of, again, the beautiful thing that I want to point out about Rodney and I's interaction. And because of where we're at in life, the maturity we've gained. I mean, you can ask Rodney. We've worked together in the past. We've both been very emotional about certain things because of insecurities and all this stuff, like we all struggle with. But I feel like Rodney and I are both in a place in our life where we've matured quite a bit. I myself have a lot of maturing to do still yet. I think it's a constant growth. I think it's part of life. But I could just tell that you could tell that we have both grown a lot within the last few years. And so we were able to bring our best to the table. Rodney jumped off in this, I mean, took a huge leap in my opinion. I mean, way riskier than anything I've ever done. Like, he jumped into a welding shop with It was an existing welding shop, but that, I mean, he took on a huge amount of debt. And so therefore that comes with like, you have to be there running your business to literally pay for itself, not to mention make profit and like work all these little kinks out and everything. And what I brought to the table was like, again, my point of view from what I had learned and what I've been forced to do, which is slowing things down. Because for me, I've literally had to say no to things. I've literally been forced to slow things down, but I haven't had the pressure of, it's just totally different like business models. I haven't had the pressure of an overhead of a shop, you know what I mean? So just the nature, the online business, the digital courses we build, just the way we make income, YouTube AdSense. It's like, we have the option to create something and sell it digitally. So there's always like, it's just different. It's a lot slower pace. We work on things for a while and then we launch something versus like Rodney, he's got to make payments every single month on something that he built off into. So it's like, all that to say is the beautiful thing about us coming together. It really just highlighted things about ourselves that we were, for me, that I didn't know about myself. You know what I mean? I didn't know that I was good at, slowing things down or whatever, or I didn't see it in the same light that I was able to see it through helping Rodney with his business. So I can see a good thing coming from us working together is what I can see, and I'm excited about that. So, by the way, if any of you have any questions, definitely let us know in the comments, and that will spur different topic ideas for this ongoing conversation that we're going to have, about business and where Rodney's business is and where it's going to go, what we have plans for, whatever. But we definitely want to welcome questions in the comments if you need some more clarity on a certain subject, because before we started this conversation, we were going to talk about several different things, and Rodney and I are learning that you can dissect something a lot, and you can talk about something for a really long time and get in. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast, this conversation between us two. So, but it's definitely going to be an ongoing process because things can be dissected and slowed down as much as you want, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Uh, one thing I wanted to hit on as far as the details, especially from the point of view of having employees, because the one thing that Austin pointed out was whenever we were getting details like on projects we were doing. And so I would get details, I would get measurements, I'd get this, that, and the other. And then when it was time to take it to the guys, that's where sometimes I would minimize something thinking that everything was clear, and then there would be something that would come up or an issue or a mistake or something, and we would have to fix it. But realizing, Austin from an outside perspective had noticed that if we don't have all the details and communicating from this moment, getting those details about the project or measurements, etc., and then trying to take those details and give them to your guys so that they can build the product that you need. It was realized that like you can minimize that too.
I would say there was a ball being dropped in between, us as the one taking the project information, between us having the information and the employee having the information. There was a ball dropped there. There wasn't enough details, and I literally did it too. I can think of that box I had Heath build. Like I wasn't detailed enough, and a lot of that comes with knowing your help and knowing, and I didn't know Rodney's help like he knew him or whatever. But I just think, yeah, communication, I think is what Rodney's saying. Like, is really, really, it's a really valuable. Again, just slowing down, getting the details, taking the time in the planning. I think is one thing I was pointing out whenever I was up there. Is like literally trying to shift your mindset from busy, busy, weld to putting more energy into the planning and the communicating of that planning, like literally the details. Because if not, sure, it may all work out in the wash with little projects and stuff, but if that's your habit, that's going to bleed over into every project and you're going to be constantly frustrated. Versus if you take the time to plan and communicate that to your help, it's going to, creating that habit in a work culture is going to benefit you tenfold. It's going to make things go more smoothly. Do you have anything to add?
Or is the planning? No.
Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
so
No.
what's one thing that you what's one thing currently that you're Let's talk about one thing that you're currently struggling with or learning right now. Like if you and I were on the phone right now and you were talking about you're building a jig for some cattle guards, like what's something that
Yep.
have you been pondering on anything that
I would say just like since you left, we've been working on organizing the shop and getting the workflow, all the way from when the materials dropped off and when it gets brought in. And we actually ran into an issue, which earlier when Christian came up here, he pointed out something outside because we have all the pipe for the cattle guards and the 4.5 inch pipe is like they're like 40 feet long, because the way that we when you're here for Christmas set up that outside material rack
yeah.
and what that's way at the end of the drive. Well, so the problem that he was running into is when he used the forklift to unhook the or to unload a 4 inch piece of pipe so we can bring it in to cut it, that it wasn't easy to just back up turn because of how long it is, that rack was in the way. So you couldn't just back up, drop it on the rollers to roll it inside because ideally we set everything up for material to be 24 feet long at the most. And here we're dealing with drill stem pipe that's, approximately 30 something feet. And then you got the other casing that's like about 40. So that's kind of messed up our little setup. So that's an issue that we currently, is just trying to find the right flow because here, so just to help you guys kind of understand how it's set up, we built a new rack that's parallel with the shop doors. And then we have another old material rack that came with the shop, and we've got them spaced just enough to where you can back up with a forklift and turn with a 24-foot piece of square tubing and turn 90 degrees and then unload onto the rollers that are right there. So we have this other rack that we're either going to have to move to a different location or spread it out further, but then we get into our driveway to where semis that try to drive around the building, it's going to get in their way. And with all the snow we have right now, it's already tight. So anyways, so yeah, that's just setting up is
Yeah, so
is
that's
kind of current thing that we're learning.
which is a segment of business in itself, one that you and I have talked about, which is more flow in your shop, like what you're saying. That's something we talked about whenever I was up there this last summer. And that's, you've been taking action on that by trying to organize the shop, get stuff built to hang stuff on or whatever, you know what I mean? Like just trying to get it organized, as well as the outside, which is these racks that he's talking about. And even though that seems like something little, that's like, I know for me, I have a habit of just working with working with the workaround, just working with it because you get in the habit of working with it. And so Rodney and I, I think through our conversations, we're trying to change our ways of thinking that I personally believe came from our upbringing. Our grandpa was really the one that said, learn something every day, every Sunday, taught us great work ethic and whatnot. But he one thing that he did was, like, just to give an example, he always had a trailer with no trailer brake. I don't, yeah, I'm almost certain no trailer brakes or no trailer lights. And so we had to get home before dark. We had to and there's just several little things that, we worked with him, and it was just that was just how he worked, you know what I mean? The time he grew up, whatever, like he just got by with what he had. And although that's great, Rodney and I are trying to go beyond that. We're trying to learn from that. We're trying to change our ways of thinking, rather than working with, the workaround. I'm the world's worst as I'm sitting here. I'm like, I mean, it's literally, it was ingrained in us. That's what we seen growing up. You know what I mean? So all that to say is this rack that Rodney's talking about, it's like, that's a kink that I believe he would love to work out, but it's something that takes attention and intentionality to actually change that, because you could just work with that, but it's gonna, when you think about a very well-oiled shop and things going smoothly, you got to work out those little kinks, or else you never will. And you never, like, there's just so much value in working out those little bitty details, focusing on them, being intentional about working them out, because that could cost you a job in the long run. If you're not constantly refining your business, it could lose you a job, because something that could take you 30 minutes is taking you 45, and then you add on another kink that you haven't worked out, that's an extra 15 minutes, that's an hour versus another smooth running shop, they're getting it done in 30 minutes. So it's like just focusing on those little bitty details is what I take out of that. And it's a conversation Rodney and I have had a lot. But yeah, yeah, awesome. So
That
so that's the current.
and to tie that into the whole project management, what Austin was just saying there is that if your shop isn't operating at efficiency, so when you're planning, if you're like, oh yeah, the way everything's been going, it takes 2 days to do this project, whereas you go to a shop that is smoothly running, everything flows like it's supposed to, and it only takes them a day, that will affect on when you're planning and scheduling and you're going through the status of your project. And it helps you know that when you're looking at this project, even in the middle of it, you can go, okay, here we are. We've got to be done by the 22nd, and we're just a few days out. Is everything going smoothly? And so that's why it's important. This is part of us dissecting the planning because it affects your outcome. Because if you're planning, you got things going, but then if you are not doing things efficiently and checking on your stuff, because after Austin left, it took me a little bit because I got dependent on him keeping me in check on where projects were at to where I started slipping out. And then I had to kick it in gear and go back and start checking things. And that's where I was like, well, things are slowing down because it's wintertime. So we're going to take the time to build a rack. We're going to take time to clean and organize because now's the time. Because when Austin was up here, it was chaos. And so you try to take advantage of those times, but planning and knowing where you're at with these projects, everything it's like the Lion King. It's the circle of life. It's the circle, everything affects everything. And so that's why it's super important to think about these little things. And we're still evolving and going because if you're in your own business or you're just getting started, don't think that you're going to have it figured out. It's better to have a bad plan and work on the plan than it is to wait 10 years to get the perfect plan and then you're 10 years behind.
Yeah, totally. Which I could bring it back around to something that we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, which was walking through the mud and how beneficial that is. Versus if you never start, you don't start learning super practical things that you can do in your specific business. You have to work on your own business. You are the only one that knows your business the way you know it with the circumstances that you have. And so, yeah, I mean, totally, like everything affects everything, but walking through it, the whole concept of what you're saying, like just start, as I would say, just start doing something versus waiting and trying to make sure it's perfect because it's never going to be perfect. So yeah, totally, I totally agree. Speaking of planning, the exciting news that we want to share with you is that the TV show that I was talking about earlier, this planning became very beneficial to being on the TV show because these projects that we had to help Cappy with had deadlines. But we also had projects, Rodney's customer projects that we needed to schedule in as well. So it was very important to know where these projects were, where we're going to put them on the calendar, but also throw in one of Cappy's projects, which aren't planned as in much detail as we were trying to do with Rodney's customers project. So it challenged us, but it was helpful to know where the projects were, Rodney's customer projects were, so we could then at least, it was just helpful to know all that. And all that to say is an episode went up yesterday as of the recording, as of the publishing of this video. An episode should have went up yesterday, which would be the 23rd.
23rd.
Yeah, January 23rd. Episode went up, and that way, I think that's the first episode that I'm going to be in. Do you know?
I think so.
Yeah, no, I'm almost, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Super.
exciting news.
Yeah. So the Ross brothers, as if you guys go check it out, that it was the time that we got to work together on TV and there's a super cool scene that I can't wait for you guys to see. Super cool project. It's super unique, which I honestly, Austin, we can either tell them a little bit. Yeah, I mean, we could probably tell them about it because it's the day after, and they can go watch the show for themselves.
I was gonna say some of them may have already seen it before they're watching
Oh
this. They
yeah,
may have already seen it, but if you haven't,
yeah.
go check it out. It's on the Magnolia Network called Building Outside the Lines, season 2, episode 4,
I
5,
think
5,
it's five,
6.
6. No, it'll
Oh
be
yeah,
6.
6.
Episode 6. Yeah. So what we'll do in a future episode, we'll go over how I got tied into with Cappy for the TV show. But we'll save that for another one because that's a whole nother episode in itself. But just to dive in real quick, it was super cool because Austin was up here and Cappy called and was like, "Hey, can you come out? You know, because I got these I beams I need welded." And which for me it's kind of like, you know, nothing surprises me anymore. But you know, for Austin, you know, and we legit needed 2 welding trucks, and so I was like, "Austin, let's go." And it was actually a Saturday morning, so we were just, you know, they were trying to squeeze in, and also trying to get Austin wrapped around what it was like to be around a film crew. And I think for him, which he knows, obviously doing your own recording and editing and all the things, you start to see that this film crew, there's about 20 of them, everyone doing their own job. Anyways, going in the weeds of that, we'll more about it. But anyways, it was just cool for Austin to see the other side of it. But so we obviously loaded up the trucks and we drove out there. And as you will see, or if you haven't already seen, the he had 2 drilling rig or pump jack. He had a pump jack stands and one on each side. And so Austin and I had to get up in there and fly these I beams and weld them onto these bases that were on these pump jack stands. Is that what you call it? Stands?
Uh, yeah, good enough. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But yeah, so we had to get in there and they flew them up. But obviously, the thing that everyone should know that when it comes to production and filming, it is not a fast process, and especially whenever like we're ready just to get in there and go, they got to catch all their shots. They got to put a mic on you, and it was really cool getting Austin introduced on the show, and actually, you know, for us to actually do some serious welding. And so, what did you think, Austin, about being on there? What was your little experience that first day being out there?
yeah. Like Rodney said, I did get thrust into it, and which sometimes is good, but I was just constantly like it was literally it was last minute. I was just I got to see on a pretty fast pace kind of how things, just making phone calls like, hey, wait here, don't pull in until this, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly, and then whenever you get there, you jump out, they mic you up. That's one of my favorite parts that I pointed out right away was somebody else was micing me up. I didn't have to worry about getting a mic. I just stood there like this, and Vinny, I think was his name, real good dude.
Yeah,
He mic'd me up, and so yeah, that was my favorite part for starters. But yeah, definitely a slow process. I like Rodney said, I'm definitely used to that, but I didn't know because even though I'm used to production, I'm not used to having a crew and I'm not used to having a overall vision. I don't have a producer. I am the producer and I'm not a good producer in my opinion. I got too much other things going on in my mind half the time. But anyway, so I did a lot of sitting back that first day working on this I-beam stuff. I did a lot of sitting back and asking questions, trying to get a vibe of when I could talk, when I couldn't. But it's like, because you want to be yourself, but you also like you're just not used to the vibe. You're just not sure, your first day. I'm like, so I was just, but it was very fun. I definitely remember having lots of fun. I can see where it would be frustrating for Cappy at times, being the guy that's trying to get the project done for the customer and the timeline, more than anything, the timeline, because the production, what Rodney's talking about is it's slow because you'll want to go do something. They're like, wait, we got to catch this on film. We got to get you, what I mean? We got to get up here, get a drone up here. We got to get a camera here. We want to get this right here. So then you're like sitting back, waiting, you know what I mean? And so once you get used to that pace, and also, I think Cappy's real good from what I've been able to see. at communicating what he needs also. I think that's important in any relationship, is like making sure that we're communicating what we need, because Cappy needs certain things being the contractor, and the producer team needs certain things being the producing team. You know what I mean? So it's like just communicating that very frequently. That way, each person can account for what the other one needs. You know what I mean? And like making that, you know, an ongoing relationship that you constantly revisit, just like in business, revisit,
Oh, yeah.
reevaluate constantly. So yeah, I had a good time.
Yeah. So, what did you think about after, kind of once, because there was a moment there where they kind of just left us be, and so it was kind of cool to actually, because there's times where they sometimes have other scenes that they need to go shoot, so they kind of leave you alone. But we also get to film some of our stuff. I don't remember how much you actually got to record, Austin, on yours because it was still kind of new. Like for me, I was, trying to catch everything that I could. But there is, like when you're filming this stuff, because it's cool. Because if you guys go watch season one, there's a lot of scenes where I'm in. There's other stuff where they actually use my iPhone footage. So that was kind of cool. But what was your take on, the whole like trying to film yourself because it's not your normal scene of doing your YouTube channel thing, like that little struggle there, I would call it.
Great, great question. Rodney and I talked about this whenever I was up there, and it was extremely difficult because I think, because if I remember, I was telling you, it was a lot of it for me was because I was trying to get something accomplished. So like the worker, or the labor part of me was like, I
And
had a goal in mind and I was trying to get it done. And since there was a producing team there, I didn't I wasn't focused on my, which, yeah, this sounds crazy from, looking back several months, but it's like I credit it to my bandwidth or whatever. Like I wasn't able to focus on like sharing things like I normally do, because there was a producing team there. It wasn't like I just wasn't. It was weird. It's weird looking back now, but it was difficult for me to focus on that while trying to get the project done for some reason, and I'm leaving something out. I can't pinpoint what it
well,
is, but go ahead.
if I remember right, I think from one of our conversations, because one, there is a little bit of difference because whenever you're not, it's not our TV show, we're just guest on it. So whenever you are taking film and stuff of yourself on it, I mean, obviously they let you film it because it's a real project, but like whenever you're just trying to catch something in the moment, it's hard to get, because the very first time I filmed for the pilot episode, I was like, I need to know that I have a part in the picture to where I have a reason to get creative or to, and so sometimes you kind of have, because the way this TV show is filmed, it is very like they want natural. They want a little spunky. They do have an agenda of what they're trying to catch. So whenever you are talking, they want fun, they want serious, but they also want a little, like in this episode particularly, like they wanted Austin and I to have this brother, what did they call it? Duo, kind of like a challenge against each other.
Banter.
Banter. That's what it was. So that was, kind of once we got into it, it was, as you'll see, us, well,
Maybe.
like we think at this point we haven't seen it. So we're just kind of guessing. We're telling you behind the scenes. They wanted us to race. And so, obviously brothers racing against each other is always kind of like, which is fun because that's what made filming the episode like encouraging and, like once we get into it. But I think what Austin was trying to hit on was when you're in the middle of filming this stuff, you don't feel like it's yours. You don't, and especially as Austin was teaming up with me on this episode to help, so it's hard to like get in there and do what Austin normally does. Is that kind of
Yeah, that definitely, and I'm kind of pinpointing it. I think for me, it kind of goes pretty deep about like personal confidence issues, but it's like what I tell myself, like in that moment, what I think I'm telling myself is I don't know how, I don't know what, kind of like you said, like where am I at in this? But also I don't want to just film this, like this is mine, because it's not. It's just I was on it. I think it's just I was just overwhelmed. But it also, it's like when you're filming something, you want to have some type of, like, who are you filming for? What is the narrative? You know what I mean? Like I just I needed more but I needed more direction with with the narrative that I was going to be giving, I think is what you're kind of pointing out. And because I am so used to filming by myself and not around a bunch of people and not with other people, that's been a hindrance of mine personally. Like I'm so used to filming by myself that I sometimes have trouble including other people. And so since Rodney was there, and since I just didn't know what narrative to put on it, and so I didn't, like, or I struggled with, I just struggle with being myself, kind of. I don't know how else to describe it, but yeah,
Sure.
it has something to
Well,
do with the narrative as well as some
yeah.
personal issues. To be honest, yeah.
Well, and just for you guys to know a little uh between brothers, how Rodney is with Austin and Austin, which I got reminded while he was up here because I'm a like I try to be an encourager. I try to be a like influencer, like, hey, you should do this, you should do this, like you know, you should join in or whatever. And Austin's like, no, no. You want what? I'm gonna step back just a little bit. Anyways, I said it more joking, but that's the difference between our personalities. Austin starts to step back a little bit whenever I start coming in too hot and trying to like there's another scenario that we'll talk about at another time on another episode that
Just
we can.
putting what Rodney's talking about is he pressures me to do something sometimes, and it's something that I absolutely do not want to do. And I think even more so, I don't want to do it because he's pressuring me. So that's something that he's talking about. But yeah.
Yeah. So
But I
anyway,
just want to but I just want to voice that I struggle with confidence things. So it's not, I don't think Rodney should pressure me as much, but I know that I also am learning a lot about myself in my early 30s. And the more I get to know myself, the more I feel like I'll be able to include myself in certain situations authentically. Yeah.
what do you think, Austin? What do you think?
So, so anyway, I guess we should just put a button on it. I mean, this
Yeah.
has been a good conversation. I hope those of you who are watching have learned something and found value in it. Got to know us a little bit more here at the end, and I'm looking forward to more conversations because of what I struggle with, feeling by myself too much. I need this interaction more often. I want to include people in my videos more, but I have such a insecurity around it for some reason. So I hope by us having more conversations and me helping with Rodney's business, I hope it can be beneficial to all of you as much as it's benefiting myself. So yeah, I've enjoyed this conversation. Looking forward to further conversations about, like Rodney said, getting into pipeline, how he got into pipeline. Any conversations in the future, we plan on getting more into depth in. That you guys might be curious about. So anyway, I've had a good time, and I appreciate you taking the time to jump on a call with us and introduce yourself to
Yeah.
my audience, and looking forward to more conversations.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm definitely looking forward to a lot more conversations because I think there's a lot of value to be added out there.
Totally, totally. All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up, and we will see you all in the next video. What do we say at the end of all the videos, Rodney?
Uh, where there's a will, there's a way. Oh, check
Oh, that's right.
out.
No.
Oh, learn something every day. Or-
There you go. Learn something every day is what we say at the end of my videos.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
what Rodney always says, which is very helpful, by the way, which is there's always a way.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's
There's
always
always
a
a way.
way. Anyway, we can wrap it up. It looks like you got
Okay.
company, so we'll catch
Yeah.
you. We'll catch you next time.
Okay. Sounds good.
We'll see you. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure and subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you get notified whenever we post another one. I'm hoping to post one in a week and a half, like every other week, starting out here. Also, you'll probably enjoy this video where I interview Andy, my welding partner, on a pipeline job I was on in 2019 in West Virginia. So go check that out. Have an awesome day. And remember, learn something every day.